here, and welcome to the very first of hopefully many GreekTech, Biotech, Life Science, and Healthcare panel. This is the third in a series of industry-specific events GreekTech has hosted in this specific vertical, and we're thrilled to have some amazing panelists join us today for this discussion. My name is Stavrou. I'm a senior advisor in the biotech space and a board member of GreekTech. I'll be co-moderating today's discussion, and I'm truly honored to have Lina of Greek Women in STEM as our co-moderator today. Lina, I'll give you the floor to briefly introduce yourself to the group.
Thank you very much, Stephen, and thank you everyone for joining, and thank you to our incredible panelists. It's a pleasure and an honor to have you all here and volunteering your time to share your knowledge and wisdom with us. My name is Lina, as Stephen said, and I'm a postdoctoral researcher at Yale. I work on lung diseases, and I am the founder of the Greek Women in STEM, which is it's a website and organization focused on highlighting and promoting female scientists' achievement with some relation to Greece all over the world. I think we can start now.
Thank you, Lina.
Thank you.
So before we turn things over to our brilliant panelists, I want to take just a brief moment to give an overview of GreekTech for those just joining or who are new to our community. GreekTech is the first New York City-based tech community and startup accelerator that's built by and for Greek entrepreneurs, with an overarching goal of elevating the startup ecosystems of both Greece and Cyprus by assisting high potential startups to successfully enter the US market. We've set forth a strong mission to be a landing pad for Greek tech entrepreneurs and startups looking to expand in the US, with a long-term vision to truly become a global network and resource platform for Greek tech professionals and entrepreneurs around the world. Our community, of course, is very strongly supported by the involvement of the diaspora, which is probably highly represented in today's audience. And to date, we have over 1,000 members, and we continue to grow. Offering founder support with fundraising, introductions to clients, talent recruitment help. We organize many activities such as the panel discussion today. Workshops, pitch days, soft landing services, programs for acceleration with some of our partners abroad, and much more. And we also play a pivotal role in promoting the Greek startup ecosystem to the ecosystem of New York in an effort to create local jobs, which is extremely important to us. And this panel today is an example of the result of all of this. We have a very diverse mix of panelists from the Greek community and from all over the world who are launching, fundraising, hiring, and much more. And so that's a good segue into our discussion today. So enough from us, because we have an incredibly impressive lineup of panelists, perhaps one of the most impressive panels I've ever had the privilege of being a part of in this space. They represent various angles of the sector, ranging from medtech, health tech, AI, connected device, medical devices, biopharma, biotech, big data, and so much more. So thrilled to have them. Thank you to our panelists. I won't introduce all of them right now in detail. That will be our first ask of them. But just to let everyone know who we have with us today, we have Fay Christodoulou, co-founder and chief scientific officer of Miroculus. Vangelis Vergetis, co-founder and executive officer of Intelligencia. Evangelos Pappas, founder and chief scientific officer of RTsafe. Afroditi Konidari, co-founder and CEO of Tendertec. Effie Albanis, chief medical officer of Neurogene. And unfortunately, Kimon Angelidis, who you might have saw on the poster, won't be able to join us today due to some personal reasons, but we wish him all the best. He is a prolific healthcare entrepreneur. We're very happy to have him in our network, and we look forward to having him in future events and to introduce him to the community. So without further ado, let's jump right in it with some brief introductions with our panelists. So we'll ask of each one of you 60 seconds about yourself and your company, and maybe you can give us some insights along the way also about what sparked your interest in this industry and what is a problem your company is solving for. Might be interesting to the audience to hear kind of what pain points you're tackling in the industry. So 60 seconds about yourself and your company, what sparked your interest in the industry, and what problem is your company solving for. And maybe we'll start with Fay.
Okay, you know my official role been introduced. What you don't know is that I also happen to be one of Miroculus' most impatient customers. And let me tell you why. I've spent the last 15 years I have done research in 5 different countries across 2 different continents to find out how much geography matters in terms of what access to latest protocols and tools a scientist has to do their job. So we researchers are very adaptive, we keep calm, carry on at a slower, faster pace, depending on where we are. However, if we zoom out of this micro environment and think of the implications of what I described, they're rather serious for society as a whole, or even at least the scientific community. If you can imagine how much faster advances would be, how much more frequent the positive impact of scientific output could be reaching the average person in a scenario where scientists had broad access to the latest protocols to do their work. Because these protocols are used to generate, new methodologies to detect disease, characterize it better, discover drugs, and answer questions that couldn't be answered before. So these are the questions we asked with my co-founders when we met back in the day when I was doing my postdoc, and we set out on a mission to advance science and improve lives faster together. And right now, we have launched recently, late last year, our first product, the Miro Canvas, which uses digital microfluidics to automate and miniaturize complex protocols. Our first application is in next generation sequencing, but there's other applications in synthetic biology and CRISPR cell editing, as well as combinatorial chemistry for drug discovery.
Amazing. Thank you, Fay.
Did I forget something from the question? I think I answered.
What sparked your interest in this industry and what problem your company is solving for, which you covered a bit, yeah.
Yes.
Excellent. Okay, Vangelis?
Thanks, Stephen. And it was quite the build-up about the brilliant, insightful panel. I don't know how much we can do, but we'll try our best. The brief background, I'm an engineer by training. This was a very, very long time ago. About 15 years ago, I joined the healthcare world. Initially through consulting. I was at McKinsey for a long time, working with pharma companies and biotechs on all sorts of topics. And about 3 years ago with Dimitrios, my co-founder, we pulled together Intelligencia, which sits squarely in that intersection, the intersection of healthcare, drug development on one side, and then technology and AI on the other. The short version of what we do is we help our customers understand, reduce, and think about or assess the risk of drug development. So how likely is it that the clinical trial will succeed? And in the era of coronavirus, 5 years ago, very few people knew what a clinical trial was. My grandmother called me yesterday at the age of 90, telling me about clinical trials. So there's obviously much more interest even in the popular press about them. So what we're focusing is applying technology to make clinical trials faster, better, more efficient, and eventually get drugs to patients. I'll leave it at that, and I'm sure we're going to have a good discussion around all sorts of topics.
Awesome. Thank you. Evangelos.
Thank you so much, Stephen. So I am a professor of medical physics in the University of West Attica in Athens, Greece. So I am based in Athens, and the founder of RTsafe. So what is RTsafe? It was founded 6 years ago, and it is a biomedical technology company that has developed, patented, and FDA cleared, let's say, the world's first personalized care solution for radiation oncology. So we are addressing the challenges that are related with the uncertainties that are present when a cancer patient receives radiotherapy. So we are enhancing safety and efficiency of these treatments by a very strange way. Initially, we are focusing brain tumor patients, and what we are doing is that by using each patient anonymized CT scans, we are building a patient-specific avatar, a phantom that actually mimics the patient. We are 3D printing the bone structures and the skin surface, and the role of the brain is taken by a polymer gel. So at the end of the day, we are building heads of people, and these heads interact with radiation like the living people and also detect radiation. So the medical team, before treating the actual patient, Initially, they can simulate the whole treatment, they can treat, they can test and simulate the treatment using our pseudo patients. And therefore, they can fine-tune the treatment. If there is an issue, they can fix it. And thereafter, they can copy-paste the treatment to the living patient. As I said, it was recently FDA cleared, and we have many partners in the US, mainly academic institutions. It's only recently that we have started to have some commercialization, but we are on good tracks. So that's it, more or less, so far.
Amazing. Thank you, Vangelos.
Thank you, Steve.
Let's bring it over to Afroditi.
Good morning and good evening, everybody, depending where you are. So I'm Afroditi. I'm the co-founder of Tendertec, and with my team, we are bringing remote people-centered care to the world. We are a deep tech AI startup in the age tech sector specifically, and we split between the UK and Greece. What we really do is we help health and social care providers across Europe to build a story that often gets missed outside patient visits by monitoring remotely a growing list of behavior and vitals from anywhere in the world. So I co-founded Tendertec after experiencing firsthand the aging journey of my grandmothers, the struggle of my parents with their aging parents, and the impact that all this had on everyone's health, well-being, and the relationships and the wallet of the family. And what I kind of realized with my co-founder who had similar experiences was that we are very privileged to be part of countries where we have public state-funded systems. But the reality is that as people are living longer and often with multiple chronic conditions, those systems really apply a one-size-fits-all kind of approach in the kind of care they deliver. And since at the moment in many European countries, a lot of those social care systems are quite reactive, they're short-staffed and underfunded, care kind of waters down to a 15-minute visit. That is the norm. And simply there are not enough resources to be able to personalize care, understand each person individually in order to give what is best for them. So with our platform, which is called CareBox, we enable actually health and social care providers to monitor a growing list of behaviors and vitals, such as temperature trends, falls, daily living activities. And in that way, we generate the data-driven, actionable insights they need to deliver personalized care effortlessly and at the right time and at the right place 24/7.
Awesome stuff. Thank you, Afroditi. And we'll go to Fay. Effie.
Yeah, thanks. So hi, everyone. Hopefully what I say can be informative for some of you who are in the beginning of your career, in the middle, or maybe even at the end of it. But I'm a hepatologist by training, and I never thought I would find myself in the pharma world or in the biotech world. But in 2006, I decided to leave practice because I was tired of seeing all of my patients dying while waiting for liver transplants, and many of them were dying from hepatitis C. So I joined a large pharma, decided large pharma is not for me, and I joined a small pharma that was only a biotech, actually, with just about 50 people. And there we developed the cure for hep C, and it was transformational. And it was so transformational that hepatitis C is no longer the leading indication for liver transplantation. And I felt very fortunate for being a part of that and helping maybe not some of my patients who had died, but future patients coming with hep C. After that, I joined another liver company and then decided that I would leave the liver and join the world of gene therapy, because I looked around and I saw what had happened in a disease called spinal muscular atrophy that was transformational with gene therapy. And these are children who are born with this genetic disorder and are dead by the age of 2. And they were treated successfully once with gene therapy, and they're now 5 and 6 years old, and they are living normal lives and attaining their milestones. And so I was fortunate to work with a woman named Rachel McMinn, who founded Neurogene 3 years ago. And together, we are building a company and bringing in people whose mission is to make a difference in these very rare diseases through genetic therapies. And the treatments that we develop are for a myriad of pediatric disorders that are devastating. At least for my liver patients, there was always the hope of a liver transplant, but for many of these children, there is no hope, and it's just death. And hopefully some of the treatments we develop can have a transformational effect for their lives.
Thank you, Effie, and thank you for sharing the journey of your work. I think from all the panelists, it's great to get to know you. It's great for the audience to get to know you, but it also shows kind of the depth we have in this panel, and hopefully will provide many insights for the topics we have coming up. So with that, we'll get into our first topic or session before I hand things over to Lina, and it will cover some of the things that were just mentioned by some of the panelists on AI especially. The emergence of AI over the past few years, as we know in the health tech space, has powered a variety of innovative healthcare solutions. So we'd like to target this discussion to, in particular, Afroditi and Vangelis, because you're working on products in the AI space. And so where do you see this headed? What are some of the risks? And maybe Afroditi, we'll start with you, maybe from the perspective of connected devices also and remote monitoring.
So it's a truly exciting time to be in the sector. I sit at the forefront of AI, connected devices, behavioral science, and it's great that we are developing the ability and the capacity to continuously and remotely monitor an array of behaviors and vitals. In the past, we would periodically measure or have self-report from patients during a visit to the doctor. And although we still have some way to go in creating AI systems that are fully autonomous and ready for the intricacies of the human nature, we're learning more than ever before. And that's the way we get into new opportunities that arise to improve health and care services, make them more integrated, more personalized, more preventative. In this journey, though, we have to kind of be able to take in consideration that the doctors and the healthcare professionals are learning with us, because this wealth of data it is the first time that it's becoming accessible. So a lot of our work revolves around educating the market and educating the users, and also being able to allow them to see the vision that we have and being able to explain to them what more they could do and how their profession will be changing through the application of AI in their specific sector. And I believe the outcomes for users will be tenfold if we manage to do what I call connect the connected devices. I'm not sure if any of the other panelists have similar issues in their sectors, but in the connected device area, there's a little bit of a tendency for suppliers and manufacturers to want to trap customers into their own connected device ecosystem and just force everybody to just use their own products. And that kind of takes away the opportunities of being able to create platforms that integrate and connect to anything. And as a result, you get much less value as a customer because you have to use very specific products at each time. And so in that respect, I would also say that the other major focus that we feel is very important to highlight is that as companies in this sector, we become privy of people's personal data. People choose to share that data with us. We don't own them. We're not entitled to them. And as a result, we should be developing structures that enable the users to maintain full control of their data and understand fully how those are shared and in what way and for what outcome. Otherwise, we risk the reputation of the sector before we begin. And the last thing that anybody wants to see is healthcare data being used to deprive people of opportunities rather than extending the opportunities that they have.
Thank you, Afroditi, for sharing that and for also calling out some of the risks. You know, sometimes we see AI as an amazing, powerful tool for healthcare, but it's important to also highlight some of the challenges that we face going forward. Maybe Vangelis, maybe you can give us some of the perspectives from your work in building Intelligencia and the platform, your thoughts on where we're headed in the industry with advanced technologies.
Thanks, guys. I'll start with a couple of broader thoughts on your first question around AI and where do we see it headed and all that. Look, anybody, in my view, anybody who's in this space is in it for the patients. At the end of the day, you want to improve the human condition in whatever definition of that you have. It probably means two broad things. One is increasing outcomes The second one is improving access. There's a lot of people that don't have access to healthcare, even though that healthcare exists. And technology can do both of those things. And we can go deep what those are. I'll touch on a couple of things, right? One theme on outcomes. This whole industry, we've been so far curing disease. We wait until something happens to you, and then we try to figure out how on earth do we cure the thing. Technology, but not just technology, a mindset as well, can help us move from that to the definition being not how do we cure a disease, but how do I have a healthier population? How do I make this person healthier even before they get disease? And technology can, a lot of the monitoring that Afroditi talked about and predictive analytics can help prevent a lot of diseases. There's a large theme there. On access, it's the obvious things. We are on a Zoom meeting right now rather than meeting live in New York. This creates a lot of opportunities, challenges too with data sharing, privacy and all that, but it creates a lot of opportunities for people that did not have access to good care to actually get that. Specific things, and I'm not going to give you a long list, but across both of those things, how can we develop better drugs? How can we develop drugs faster? Technology can help with all of those. How we can utilize better care. Afroditi made this point, how we can coordinate care better and monitor care so that at the end of the day, we have a healthier person on the other end. And I can go on and on and on and on. And it's how do we treat people, not with drugs, with other things. There's diseases now that are being treated by software. There are diseases that are being treated by video games. Video games are FDA approved. There's examples of that out there. So I can go on and on and on and on with all sorts of different areas where AI or technology can be impactful. But if I step back for a second, it's all about improving human health, be it by having better outcomes or by providing better access to people. And AI specifically and technology more broadly can do both of those. On the risks, I'm not going to go deep. I mean, I'm sure we'll pick it up later in the conversation. Afroditi mentioned some of them. Data is the main thing, both a risk as well as massive opportunity. And I'll stop here. So data sits in thousands of different hospitals, thousands of different systems, either government systems or other entities in the US. That gets connected, it becomes incredibly powerful on what we can learn about human disease and how we can cure it. So I'll leave it at that. Happy to take your lead, Steve, and go longer or deeper on any topics as they come up.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. And thanks for bringing us closer to the patient, right? Patient centricity and focus around the patient. It's where our discussion's going to head. And so before we go into that and kind of focus more on patient centricity, but also trials, anyone else from the panelists want to comment on? Feel free to jump in now before we move to the next session.
Yeah, a small comment from my end is that, again, I'm not an expert in this field, but I have a feeling that one of the main challenges might be the one of making the unstructured data from so many sources structured data. I mean, I will fear that this is the main challenge in this field. There are so many sources of data with a different structure, if there is any structure at all, and you guys have to harmonize them and structure them. I don't know if this is the case.
Vangelis, we can go very deep. I'll give you an example. So you're spot on. There is an incredible amount of unstructured data that if somebody makes sense out of it, you can learn a lot of things. Like one example is doctor's notes. Forget the MRI scans, right? That's more structured. But how about all these doctor's notes? With that come challenges. Let's assume, or publications. There's a lot of companies out there that read academic publications and try to make sense out of them. That's great. There's a lot of value there. I'll give you one example where it gets even more complex than that. Doctor's notes. They're unstructured. Let's assume we structure them. We created some very funky NLP program that can read the things, categorize them, whatever. And we're assuming we're going to learn a lot of things about them. How doctors take notes in Greece is very different than how doctors take notes in the US. In the US, and I'm not dinging anybody, this makes sense. Because that's how the system is built. doctors take notes less about informing the condition of the patient or helping their thinking. They do a lot of that, but there's also two other uses. One is making sure that the drug or whatever they're going to do gets reimbursed so that insurance pays for the thing. And two, making sure that if any legal liability or anything like that comes their way, they're covered, which is very natural. This is, they should do that. It's human. That's what I would do. But that skews a lot the information that are in those notes. So let's assume we structure them and we learn from them. Are we actually learning reality? Are we learning a skewed reality the way it was represented because it was written for a different purpose? All these, this is one example. I can go on and on and on, thousands of those, but just wanted to give people a sense or a glimpse of the complexity that goes way beyond the technological part of structuring unstructured data. Let's assume we solve the technological, which is not easy. But there's all sorts of other things that make life very hard in the world we live.
If I also may note here, there's another aspect. How do we build systems that work collaboratively with medical professionals? I think that, for example, in my sector, the first question I get is, will my job as a carer be replaced by a robot sometime in the future? And that really is a conversation that happens early on. And if you don't handle it right, it just shuts down the possibility for a pilot, for a trial, for anything. Then you get devices being disconnected, lost, broken, because we haven't worked enough on making people understand that, especially when it comes to human care, people will never, the personal touch of a human will never be replaced. What we're really trying to do is to be able to help people to do more with the same resources. So apart from looking at just the patients, we also have to look at the carers who take care of those patients and build systems that they can work easily with and have value for them.
It's a great point, Afroditi, and I don't want to monopolize this, but it's not my quote. Somebody else said this. I forget their name now. I think Derek Lowe, actually. One way I think about it, it's not that AI will replace drug developers, let's say, or will replace chemists, but the quote goes something like, AI is not going to replace drug developers, but drug developers that use AI will replace the ones that don't. A human still needs to be involved and be responsible for it and be maybe assisted by AI, but it's less about replacing people. It's more about enabling people to do better or give them the tools to make the better decisions.
Well said. Well said. Great discussion. Thank you all. And let's use that to transition into talking a bit about trials. Before we do, just want to remind everyone, because I see some questions coming into the chat, feel free to throw questions into the chat or to the Q&A function, and we'll address them at the end of the discussion. We'll leave 10 to 15 minutes to address them. So I'll hand it over to Lina to continue our discussion.
Thank you, Stephen. So moving to our next topic about the virtual or decentralized, as we were corrected, trials. I have some questions mostly asking Fay and Effie, and maybe Vangelis can help. So we all have this now pandemic situation going on, and it has accelerated the use of and the importance of virtual trials. I would like to ask you, and maybe Fay, we can start with you. From your experience, how do you think virtual trials will change the clinical research landscape, if we will ever start transitioning towards a subject-free, let's say, experimentation or clinical trial setup? Would then patients trust the only virtually tested treatment? Is it a scenario that's possible, or as Vangelis just said, that it would be not the case and just being assisted on that?
Yes, my understanding is that the pandemic has definitely, catalyzed our both familiarity and curiosity about clinical trials as an approach overall. Virtual trials or decentralized trials. And also in parallel to the technological development in wearable sensors, smartphones, all the upgrades assist with the toolkit that we have. Now, in the case of Miroculus, we do not do clinical trials. I need to underline that. We're a research use only system, but I do have a pandemic unintended virtual trial story to share, which is rather interesting, and it will lead me to the point I want to make about the study design and its importance to make the virtual trials a success. So in the course of our beta program, around, I believe, November, there was a lockdown order, and it coincided with the initiation, or it was like 1 or 2 experiments in our beta program with a new customer. And the customer was so responsible and conscious of the timeline we had agreed to complete the test set that without telling us, the customer took the instrument at home because they knew that restriction to reach the lab would delay the whole process. So, and then we only found out after tens of successful runs were completed remotely from a bedroom dresser, literally. So that was something, you know, eye-opening to us, a pleasant surprise, if I may call it, definitely not intended. And one could parallelize it to a virtual trial without, of course, the clinical component, the regulatory component. And I think it was possible because of the design thinking we have put in the product. Because what is key in the virtual setting, the decentralized setting, is that the study design has a very clear ask to the participants to simplify, you know, what do you need from them, what data are you gathering, and then the technology used, that it is user-friendly and simple. So the Miro Canvas has been designed to be user-friendly and simple, and that's what enabled the experimentalists to run these libraries, these samples, to be prepared for sequencing. So then all they had to do was, when available, drive to the lab and have them sequenced. So design thinking is key. And now with that said, I just want to underline, back to your question about the patients accepting them or not. I think ultimately these are regulated the trials outcomes regulated. So as long as the same regulatory bodies approve them, I think the patients will likely not be hesitant. And I want to underline that it is a very exciting field. We see it for the first time because of the pandemic, how much promise it has. But I also want to credit the traditional trials and what I call the next generation of traditional trials that I'm particularly very, very excited about. For example, there's emerging pharma companies, and perhaps Effie can tell us more about gene therapy. There's one in particular I'm excited about, that the clinical trials are so personalized that I have never thought of it would be possible in a trial setting, where they study, you know, the tumor mutation of each patient. They know exactly what is the driver mutation for that cancer and what neoepitope it presents, which cannot be detected by the patient's immune system. They take the T cells from the patient, they engineer them using CRISPR to target that specific mutation and reinsert them to seek and destroy. And it's successful with solid tumors, you know, there's no other treatment for. So these type of next generation traditional trials are no less exciting and absolutely necessary. And they do require, because of the complexity, the protocol I described is, you know, several days to get it going. So of course that cannot be done from a remote setting.
Thank you, Fay. Maybe Effie, Professor Albanis could comment a little bit on that too, on the clinical trials.
Yeah, let me speak first to our own clinical trials and virtual visits. I mean, we had incorporated remote visits into our natural history studies because we have children all over the world who are participating in them, and some of them are unable to travel. So the virtual components of the trials include Zoom meetings and interviews with parents. And we've slowly started incorporating as well phone app phone app evaluations where parents are able to film their child walking. And then there are specific analyses that are performed on their gait. Parents will be able to soon document seizures, for example, document hospital visits locally. So all of that, as I said, is in the process now of being incorporated into our natural history studies and ultimately into our gene therapy studies. These are the kind of studies, though, that cannot be done fully virtually. Patients have to be seen by the physician. There are assessments that are performed that have to be performed by a human being in person, seeing the patient in front of them. But thinking ahead, like who knows how long COVID will last, I think having remote assessments available for patients is key and will be key moving forward. But for gene therapy specifically, there will always be a need for an inpatient visit. And Fay, to answer your question, it's a very exciting time in medicine, in gene therapy. The field is exploding and we're only at the beginning. There's that's ex vivo gene therapy where, yes, we develop the gene therapy based on each person's specific mutation and then reintroduce that treatment into the body. The gene therapy we do at Neurogene is really meant for people who have a certain mutation. It's not as specific. And it's also, again, the beginning of some very exciting times for gene therapy. There's also, it's all part of this personalized medicine. There was a child named Mila who was suffering. I don't know if you've heard of a treatment called Milicin. She had a disease, she recently passed away, called Batten disease, that was caused by a mutation specific to her. And her mom, who's a warrior mom, a lot of mothers of children with rare diseases are warriors, especially when there's no treatment available. She went and she found a lab that could create the mouse model for this disease. And then she found a doctor who could develop a treatment specifically for her child, a single patient. And it worked. It prolonged Mila's life. It didn't save her life, but it prolonged her life and gave her a better quality of life. So yes, the possibilities for genetic therapies, Fay and everyone else, are tremendous. And I don't know if anyone who's listening is interested in gene therapy, but please reach out to me. And if anyone has ideas, or if anyone is working on a mouse model and they're interested in speaking with me, please feel free to do so.
Effie, I mentioned Vangelis, but I would like to first, as the conversation leads us that way, go to the next question, and maybe then Evangelos and Vangelis, you can both comment. Of course, Effie, you're welcome to join, and everyone else. About the patient centricity and the personalized medicine, you both talked about that, but I would like to specifically ask how this shift of industry is changing. Where do you think this is heading, and if there are any opportunity areas or any possibilities for disruption towards a very focused and personalized? Because I heard about the research focused on that kit specifically, which is touching and amazing. But besides that very unique case, what is the future? Evangelos, would you like to start? Or
yes, of course. That's so a comment in chat saying that we're speaking in general terms, and it would be nice to give some examples and be a bit more specific. So please allow me to share my knowledge from my point of view and my area. So okay, it is true that mainly because of the availability of genetic profiles of people, personalization is the new trend. Personalized medicine is the new trend. In my field, in my area, that is radiation oncology, we are trying via personalization to minimize the risks. Medical malpractice is the third leading cause of death in the United States, following heart disease and cancer, unfortunately. So also in radiation oncology, there is no currently, until RTsafe came into the field, there was no personalized way of checking the medical treatments and their safety. So this is one way of actually boosting and supporting people's lives, making them living longer with a better quality of life, like the gene therapy. So not by introducing new therapies, but by verifying that the current therapies that are high-end radiotherapy techniques are implemented correctly and safely. You know, if radiation in the brain misses the target for 2 or 3 millimeters, the side effects can be catastrophic. So even if the radiation oncologist might make a treatment plan that aims to kill the cancer cells close to the chiasm in the brain, you know, all the plan is perfect, but in real life there is a need for a personalization quality assurance process, and this is what we offer. However, I know that the main trend regarding personalized medicine is to define personalized treatments. I just gave my, not general, but specific points from what RTsafe is doing.
Thank you very much, Professor. Vangelis, would you like to comment on that?
I don't think I have much to add on personalized medicine. I think beyond, I mean, Effie talked about, the N of 1, treating a specific patient. That's probably going to be very rare in the coming several years. So eventually maybe the industry will go there, but it's going to be very rare in the coming several years. We use biomarkers quite a bit, so that it's becoming more personalized in the sense, we don't treat all breast cancer patients the same anymore. There's very many subgroups of breast cancer patients depending on specific mutations they have or conditions or whatever. So it's becoming, it's not one treatment for everybody. It's not an N of 1. It's somewhere in between for now, and it's likely, in my view, stay there for a bit. And I think one of the, I see in the chat, one of the, somebody's posting questions on data. For personalized medicine to really take off, you need an incredible amount of data to be able to identify that N of 1 or the N of 10 or the N of a few thousand. It could be genomic data, it could be lifestyle data, it could be prior disease, it could be medications that are under. There's all sorts of things you need to know. So one of the questions is, what's the toughest part with the data? It's 1, generating it, and 2, connecting it. A lot of data already exists, but it's not connected. And that's the only way for personalized medicine to actually, be able to get to a point where we're all happy with it, I guess, or more prevalent in that sense. I can go on and on trials, but I think we're past that topic now, so I'll let the conversation go.
Thank you very much. I know if Afroditi, Fay, or Effie, would you like to add anything on that?
I will just like to add that as a patient advocate for the ALK-positive group, which is a group representing a very rare type of cancer that affects younger people, I think with remote clinical trials, what a lot of people, a lot of patients are eager to see is whether, when it comes to very rare diseases, we can get people from around the world to be part of clinical trials that would otherwise fail because of low participation rates that tend to take place. So I'm not sure if that is going to happen in the next couple of years, or we need a lot more work to do on that front. But from a patient point of view, I think that's a priority.
Thank you. I think now we can go back to Stephen to move to the next topic.
Sure. Thanks, Lina. Thanks, everyone, for those great insights. We've been talking heavily inside the industry, and now I want to try and bring us now to more of the entrepreneurial side. We have probably quite a bit of good mix of founders and the participants, just judging by our community. And we want to talk a bit about fundraising. And we'll start this question specifically. We'll bring it back to Afroditi, because you've raised, and Fay, you recently had a big round. So we'd love to discuss your experiences on fundraising. We know a lot of biotech VCs are sitting on a lot of cash right now. What's the funding landscape in biotech right now? And maybe if, I know Afroditi, you might be able to touch upon this, but what are the differences you're seeing between fundraising in Europe and in the US? And Afroditi, maybe we'll start with you and then we'll move over to Fay.
Well, first, I mean, the amounts that we hear that usually take place in the US, they're quite, make us dizzy compared to what we have in Europe. Obviously, the attitude, I think that's very known is very different. A lot of the times in the US, people fund vision, where in Europe, they tend to fund more the business plan, the execution part, and the actual business model. So people are a bit more risk averse, I would say. And when it comes to the early stages of a company, that becomes quite critical. From my experience, since I'm in AI, but also we're quite hardware enabled as a company, we use a lot of sensors to do our work. Obviously, being able to raise a significant amount has been key to our growth. And it took a very specific type of investor to look at our vision, look at our plan, and invest in us. They were quite the exception, I would say. That's Metavalon VC. They are based in Athens. In general, hardware can be quite a very, very, very scary topic to touch on with investors, because I'm not purely in medical, obviously, I'm in age tech, and people are still not realizing that even in age tech, they need to go in for the long-term investment. They need to spend a lot of time and effort to help not just the startup, but the startup in its own way is helping the market educate itself. And that takes a vast amount of resources.
Thanks, Afroditi. Fay, how about your experience fundraising? Miroculus just had a very large round. Maybe you could tell us a bit about your experiences there.
Indeed, we did. With that said, I need to underline that it's not easy. Fundraising is not easy. And I'll give you an example. Our very first round for our seed, we had to pitch over 100 times. And we were so determined to start the company in those days that we would have pitched even more than 200 times if necessary. But fundraising is, I think, like every other process in a company, in running a company, it requires a process with almost standard operating procedures. And fundamental part of that is the relationship building. So, and the patience involved in that. So to give, again, a concrete example, in this round, 2 out of the 3 investors, we have actively been cultivating a relationship with them in the probably over 3 years. So, and one of them had passed on a previous round. However, we maintained contact and, observing our progress could get them on board for this round. So it is an active process that requires patience and relationship building. And now with what you said about, the landscape, how it's shaping, I think, again, the pandemic has catalyzed some positive changes. It is looking like biotech landscape is blossoming, that there is, I think, for investors, there was a moment probably during the pandemic, as well as the growth of biotech field and available options for investment, where it became attractive, not only from an economic standpoint in terms of return of investment, but also social impact of funding a startup in the biotech area. So it is definitely fertile ground for new ideas and teams to receive the support needed to start materializing a vision. And with that said, I think that and going back to Afroditi, I think her observations on location are I can confirm from our experience with Miroculus. I would still segment it in 3. So there's Europe, there's the US, and there's California. I think that's kind of an entity of its own, because in terms of risk aversion, one can classify California as the most, the site with the most appetite for risk taking. And then the gradient grows as we move to the East Coast and Europe. So again, like Afroditi said, the observations are in differences in the amounts that are allocated for investment, the speed for the investment to happen, and the risk aversion.
And if
Great
I may
points.
note, and I don't know if Fay agree with that, but in Europe, there is a large pool of grant money, grant funding. I think especially the European Commission does fill that gap that exists in Europe. We've been beneficiaries both in the UK and in the European Union area to kind of be very lucky to receive grants on developing a number of different features and sub-products in our line. So I'm not sure if that exists in the US. I'd love to hear from everybody else on the panel if they have similar support.
There are the SBIR grants, which is the nearest equivalent. One limitation with these grants, I really apologize, they're cutting a tree right outside my house, and it's really terrible timing, pardon. The limitation with SBIR grants is that there needs to be a US national as part of the founding team. So for completely international teams of founders like ours, that is not an option.
Great points. Great points on the grants too. Something a bit unique about this industry is that there's the ability to raise grant funding to support. Want to open it up to Evangelos and Vangelis too. Maybe Vangelis will start with you because I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but you guys are actively fundraising or about to. Maybe you can talk a little bit about your experience as well, and then we'll go to Evangelos.
We are. I don't have too much to add. I think Afroditi and Fay covered it very comprehensively and very well, frankly. So I don't have much to add. The only obvious point, I think US, Europe is to some degree a crude way of separating funds. There are differences on average, but there are European funds that behave much more like California, and there are US funds in the Midwest, let's say, that behave much more like European. So there's a mixed bag. The way I see it is, availability of money and all that. Top four in my mind is what does the fund, and frankly, not even the fund, what does that specific person who will eventually guide you and sit on your board, what value do they bring? If they're only bringing cash, I don't care if it's from the US and Europe, I am much, much less excited. If they're bringing something more than that, and what I'm saying, it's bloody obvious, right? I mean, it's an obvious point. But sometimes in the big numbers thrown around and all sorts of excitement around fundraising and all that, it gets missed, which is, who is actually the person investing money in your company, and how are they going to help you over the next 3-4 years grow in an incredibly fast and efficient way. If they can do that, great, even if they give me less money or lower valuation, or all those whatever. If they can't, I'm less excited.
Vangelis, this was exactly the point I wanted to make, and I'm really happy that you actually mentioned it. I totally agree that it's not just the cash. Of course, this is the main aim. However, the value of people that are going to be involved with your company sometimes is even more important. The lobbying, the contacts, the overall support. I totally agree. We do have a very small experience. Again, we were founded in the middle of the Greek crisis in Athens, so nobody would invest in a Greek entity. So the solution, because we had a Dutch-based VC, the solution was to make a holding company in Ireland and have a Greek subsidiary where everything is happening, actually. We're also having a US-based subsidiary in San Antonio, Texas. So in few words, we learned that we must have a base in the United States if we want to raise funds from the US. There's no other option. And we must not be just a Greek entity, because nobody would invest in just Greek entities at least few years back. So this is my few cents on this topic with my limited experience.
I would say, I would add one more thing, and that's the investors you get need to have the same long-term view that you do as founder. meaning there are some investors who want to make a quick buck and flip a company. And there are others who are there to build a company. And, you know, judging from the people on the panel, you've poured, like we have, blood, sweat, and tears into our companies. And we believe in the mission, and we want to see it go on for years and years. So it's important when you pick your board, they feel the same way. I mean, you can control that to a certain extent. Sometimes things just happen, but I think it's important to be aware of.
Great points. Thank you for adding that color, Effie. I'm going to transition us into the next topic. We're going to cover two more things before we move into the Q&A, but I'll hand it over to Lina. As many probably noticed, we were very purposeful in making this a gender balanced panel, not only to highlight the amazing female leadership that exists within the life sciences space, but also to talk about some of the challenges that women face in the industry. So I'll hand it over to Lina to bring us into that discussion as well.
Yeah. Thank you, Stephen. So I had some questions mainly to the ladies of the panel, but of course, as we're talking about equality and better equity, the gentlemen are more than welcome to add their opinions on that. I would like to start about asking how gender bias in clinical trials could impact women's health, and how can we make a truly personalized medicine? How can we talk about that when we know that in research, in the step before, or even in the clinical trials, there is not an equal representation in the data? Is there any shift on that? I know that traditionally, you know, the male mice were our preferred candidates. Is this more balanced in clinical trials? Is it changing with time? How do you see it going? Maybe Fay, you can start.
Yes, I'm not an expert in this. I know that FDA has, in the last 20 years, required that there is gender balance, I believe, in the study design, and even more so in diverse populations like in the US, that this diversity is reflected on the study design. I know that before the 90s, it was not the case. So obviously there were some drugs that were, you know, designed and tested for men. But I think this is changing now. I don't know if you probably more about this.
No, I agree. There's definitely a recognition that there was gender and racial ethnic bias in studies. So yes, there's definitely a movement to be for study populations to be representative of the population in which will receive whatever treatment is being developed.
So we have finally moved from the women being considered an altered male with extra complications to something that they are patients and very specific types of patients themselves. Afroditi, would you like to add on that?
I don't have so much expertise on the clinical front side, but I will say we end up working with a lot more women. Obviously, women tend to live longer than men. So it's quite the reverse. When we do our studies, we have less men participating actually in the user-centered design processes that we follow when we are designing new products. So I think, if anything, in the age tech, men are underrepresented because we're less likely to be ending up as widowers at the end of their life. And I'm not sure if that is yet quite recognized by academia.
Thank you. So maybe we can go on the patient, the actual people who suffer with this pandemic. So if this has affected people with within science, medicine, and research, do you think there is any disproportional burden on women working in these fields? Have you yourself or seeing in your environments someone being affected by that?
I think there are published data, at least in the US, showing that there has been more women opting out of the workforce than men. And I think it comes from, women taking more schooling and parenting responsibilities during the pandemic because of the lack of support from schooling being operational. So in response to that, and to reduce the workload that is now exacerbated at home, many women either went part-time or didn't take opportunities of getting promoted and receiving more responsibilities that would then break that balance. So I think in science specifically, and I'm sure Lina, you're familiar, when doing research, unless it's all dry lab research, in wet lab research, the experimentalist needs to be physically present. So even more so in these cases, the challenge of combining the excess parenting responsibilities and schooling with the scientific progress in the lab is definitely a problem that has been experienced in the pandemic.
Thank you. Anyone would like to add on that? Maybe I can just comment and say that I personally believe that we should support both genders. Like the more that fathers can contribute to the family, the more free time or professional time women could have. But if you have any comment or thoughts on that, I would love to hear it.
From my side, I mean, in my line of work, I see far too often the stereotype that females are born to take on the role of a carer, and most carers are women. And I'm afraid that quite often the more women are tending to quit their careers so as to carry the burden of care or keep a family together. In my opinion, those biases really start at home, if I'm going to be honest, and they continue before women enter the workplace, where those stereotypes can be reinforced, especially when you work in tech where there are male-dominated environments. So in this respect, I think the focus should be on changing the wider paradigm of caregiving and focus on building communities where anyone, man or woman, is able to build a career while choosing to be a primary carer for a parent, for a child at some point during their lifetime. I think we should kind of be able to provide that support, whether that happens on a company level or a state level. That's outside my expertise, but I think that a lot of people would feel more secure in pursuing a career or keeping their career, knowing that that support is there.
Thank you, Afroditi. And the last question on this topic about the, let's say, leaky pipeline, if you have any idea of how we could prevent people from dropping out from their jobs or just pausing indefinitely their careers to focus on family and personal aspects. Do you think the industry and academia could help prevent that? Moving to more online, let's say, or flexible timings, or is there any other idea or something you and your companies have tried to incorporate to assist?
I'll say two quick things. One, I think Afroditi incredibly well put your point around starting early on and making sure that people do their part to enable this equity, which doesn't exist. Let's just acknowledge we're not there yet. So we're better than we were, but we're far from anywhere good. Lina, to your point, I'm so far from the expert here. What I would say is just my observation. There's no single thing that works. There's no silver bullet. There's no let's do this one thing and the world will be better. So many things need to come together, from early education to families, to changing how people think, to how do you encourage people to get into one field subconsciously even than another early on, to being much more flexible with working hours, being much more flexible with working days, men stepping in and taking paternity leave, which in some countries it's unheard of, in some other ones it's very common. But my view is, 15 things, probably more, need to come together. Some of them are moving, some of them much slower than I would want them to see. And unfortunately, there is a way much more that needs to be done. Hopefully companies take responsibility, and some are, but a lot of other, governments need to step in, individuals need to step in, schools need to step in, and hopefully we'll get there. But my worry is it will take too long.
I see. Well, thank you all. Yeah, sorry.
These comments. I think there's one thing that is drastically changing, and I expect it to work in an accelerated fashion, which is, just this panel being gender balanced, and women get encouraged when they see other women in positions of leadership. And beyond this panel, we also have a vice president who is a woman. We have a president of the European Commission who is a woman. The more women take on leadership roles in companies, in research institutes, this familiarity and self-doubt, because of how the system exists all these years, will regress. And I'll give an anecdote that is rather interesting. And Silicon Valley is notorious about gender imbalance in tech, right? And you can imagine at Miroculus, when we receive often, collaborators, leadership teams from other companies in our headquarters, typically they are composed of predominantly men. Maybe there's one or two women, sometimes none. And there was once a visit from a CEO from a very successful biotech company that is continuously up and coming. And we saw the reverse image. So there was only one man in a group of 7 women, all VP or chief level. And it was really notable. Like everybody in the lab was, talking about it. After they left, they were like, did you see how many women were? And of course, ideally we want to see a gender balanced composition of the leadership team, because we know scientifically it's proven that boosts creativity and efficiency in the running of a company. But this type of breaking the norm practices, and for CEOs who have the vision, we're fortunate to have ours, that acknowledge, like you, Vangelis, that this is a problem, and are conscious to make sure that in all levels of management in the company, all levels of the hierarchy, there are women leaders. I believe and expect this is correctable. And there are companies that were conscious and active about it and improve their gender balance and the leaky pipeline.
Great, thank you. Thank you everyone for these very interesting comments. I would like to switch towards the next session and talk about entrepreneurship and Greece. And this is, of course, to all of you. The Greek tech ecosystem in the past years is booming, as we know, both within and outside Greece. Do your companies have some operations or offices in Greece? And if yes, what functions? And if not, what is holding you back? What is preventing such an investment? What would help you actually go forward with this?
I don't know if I can say a few things, mainly because, as I said, RTsafe is made in Greece. There are certain challenges, and to be honest, the wise thing that I should do would be to leave Greece and live in the United States. But because I have a family, 2 kids here, and I love my life here, I actually decided to stay in Greece. But of course, the problems are sometimes immense. But I'm happy to say that during the last few years, there are some initiatives that are actually supporting the Greek startups. I'm not sure if Greek high-tech startups are really a lot. Made in Greece high-tech startups. I'm not sure that they are so many. There are far more startups related to apps that help you do a variety of things that I don't. I'm not saying that they're not important, but high-tech startups in Greece, exist, but are not so many. So in few words, there is a new framework called Elevate Greece, built by the Greek government, and in this framework gives some benefits to some investors to invest in the startups, tax benefits, etc. So it seems that for being an entrepreneur in Greece, things are starting to change slowly. Still, however, the wise thing that one should do is to go abroad, ideally in the US, and build the company there. We, as RTsafe, we have only 2 people in the US, one in Boston and one in San Antonio, and try to be there. I mean, our US customers want US invoices, so this is why we actually have some office in the US. But it will be wise, and one of the reasons we are raising funds currently is actually to build a US-based team. So we still going to have the core of the company here in Athens. All the R&D is taking place here. The C-suite is here, but it's much easier for business development to have people, especially in the States.
Thank you. Effie, would you like?
I mean,
in the States again.
Yeah, we don't have any. Our company is US based, and I think the only thing I can say that might be helpful to the panels, if there's any researcher out there, like I said earlier, who's studying a monogenetic disorder, who is interested in getting some insights from me on how to create this model, how to perfect it, how to then try to develop a treatment from it, I'm more than happy to help. Or if there's someone on the panel who just has a question about biotech or about clinical trials, I'm more than happy to help and offer advice.
Lina, one thought on the ecosystem in Greece and entrepreneurship and all that. Look, what I would say a few years back, or many years back, it was almost hostile. So it was as if Greece just didn't want companies to start there. That has changed a lot, and Evangelos mentioned a couple of initiatives. So over time, that has changed quite a bit. We're not there yet. I'll give you 2 simple examples, right? Especially in our world, we are in, everybody in this panel, we're kind of like in deep science type of work, where relationships with academic institutions they don't have to, but can be important, all sorts of things. If you take an ecosystem like Israel, for example, the public sector and the startup communities work very closely together. You're a company in healthcare in Israel, you can go partner with a government-owned hospital and do some research together. In the US, you develop a drug, or you have some software that treats patients better, whatever. You can go contract with CMS or with Medicaid or with Medicare. It's tough. It takes some time, but it's you'll get to learn from them. You'll get their resources. They maybe become your first customer and they help you grow and all that. In Greece, that's close to impossible. You try to work with a research lab, or you try to work with a hospital or some government entity. You get buried in red tape, bureaucracy. 4 years later, you may actually get something done. So what I would say is a lot has been done. Elevate Greece is great. The minister or the vice minister of development, Mr. Dimas, announced an innovation park. All these things are fantastic, and they should happen. One area where I would push us as a country more is to figure out how to make it easy for innovation and collaborations to flow between government-owned entities, be it research labs, universities, hospitals, and the private sector. And right now, that's very, very hard.
I can contribute a little bit our experience, because being invested by Metavalon, we had to have presence in Greece. So I wasn't very eager, I have to be honest with you, as I have been outside the country for more than a decade. And I didn't have enough information telling me that it would be the wise thing to do, but it was a requirement. So we came at the end of 2019, and we kind of moved part of our R&D to Greece. And I think for a number of disciplines, when it comes to developing front end, back end, where there's enough talent, it's a great place to be. People are very eager to work and get experience, especially from companies that are based abroad. So you do have that excitement. There are other disciplines that are a bit more difficult to hire for: machine learning, computer vision, deep learning. There's not enough talent, I would say, and where there is, they're mostly attracted by larger companies that probably can afford much bigger paychecks than startups are able to. But also overall, I had a couple of people coming from the UK to Greece. And I think the biggest, well-kept secret is the kind of quality of life one can get. So I agree completely with Evangelos and Vangelis what they said. If from a government side we can fix on those issues that are still pending, the quality of life is there and could attract any person, younger and older, who wants to work hard in a fast-growing company, and at the same time, at the end of the work, they can go out and have a great social life, go to the sea, even if they live in Athens, within 20 minutes. Those are benefits that I don't think we have evaluated as a country as much. I will also want to agree with what Vangelis said about working with universities and academic institutions. It's really relies, you really rely on people that might have a good intention to do that, but then the structure is not there. Unlike the UK, for example, where there's sound posting everywhere and you have panels specifically focused on reinforcing ties between industry and academia. And also, I would say that I expect a lot more to happen on infrastructure side. I am very negatively surprised at times by pricing of the internet, for example, mobile internet or broadband. Those are minor things, but when, for example, we work with connected devices and we want to do a pilot in Greece, it becomes a very big barrier in deploying technology when you don't have that infrastructure there. But other than that, my own advice would be just, if you are interested in opening a foreign branch or a subsidiary in Greece, do ask the people who've done it already, because they do want to share a lot of their experience and it will save you a lot of time. I think in Greece, the saying that you don't need to try too hard, you just have to find the right way to do things is very applicable. So there is a knowledge on how to overcome barriers. It's just you have to connect to the right people all the time.
Thank you, Afroditi. And I think opportunities like the one that we have today with all you guys, sharing your experiences with the audience and us, it's an example of how people and experience can be shared, and we can help each other and grow as a country, and especially in the tech sector. Thank you very much for this part as well. And I think we can move slowly towards the closure and we can finally go to the Q&A session. Stephen?
Yeah, sounds good. We have a handful of questions that have come in, although throughout the discussion, we started to answer some of them. So we'll pick about 3 here that I think haven't been answered, pose them to the panel, and then we'll look to wrap up. Let's start with this one, and this can be targeted to anyone who's recently raised and might have some experiences. The question is, according to your experience raising funds in medical device or healthcare industry, what is the main or most common reason that can make a US-based investor pass?
I can start with that. And I'm sure Afroditi will know what I'm talking about. It really makes a difference what the product or what the vision for the solution you're developing is. I think when hardware is involved, a lot of investors are scared by how long, hardware, there's a reason it's called hardware. It takes long and there's slow iteration cycles. And that has been, a reason why some investors that would have easily invested in, just plain assay or synthetic biology application passed on the project just because it involves hardware. So that's one.
Vangelis, Afroditi, anything to add to that one?
I will just quickly add, definitely what you said there, Fay, is true, and especially with COVID and that small interruption in supply chains, it became much worse. So yeah, beware. As Fay said very successfully, hardware is called hardware for a reason.
I don't have much to add, Stephen. Maybe I'll say one thing. The reason they pass and what gets actually communicated as the reason could be two different things. So the honest answer is I don't know. I don't really know. The second part of the answer is I don't think, and at least in my experience, and it's a limited experience, there is one reason. There's dozens, I met the team, I'm not sure they're up to snuff. I looked at their plan, great team, fantastic team, but they're in a small market. They're in a big market, it's a great team, but their customer traction is lacking. I've seen 6 customers, I want to see 26 before I invest. So it could be one of 15 things. And I struggle to say here's one or two that I'm sure somebody has data on it. I don't have it.
I think what Effie said is very relevant here because, again, you want investors that believe in the vision and your ability to deliver, of course. So to meet these investors, you may need to keep, socializing, getting introductions and searching for them. And that's when the click happens.
And then another thing is, if there's a successful leadership team, then it's much easier in one company and they start another, it's much easier to get money to raise money for that second company. But that's where also relationships come in, Fay. I agree. You have to cultivate them. And eventually you may convince one or two who said no who passed the first time, right? To give money the second or third or fourth. Yeah.
Great points. There's 2 questions that have come in that I actually want to merge, maybe if we can tackle them together. The first is for the entrepreneur, and the second is for the person who wants to join a startup. So what would be sort of your one piece of advice for founders in the space based on your experience? And then what would be a piece of advice for a younger professional who wants to join a biotech startup or a biotech company in the industry? And this is open to anyone who wants to jump
in. I guess I can
go. Go ahead, Effie. I was going to say I'm not really pleased to offer advice, but there you go.
Yeah, I can speak to biotech. It's very hard to get into a startup biotech unless you know the people who are part of it, especially as an undergraduate. So what I would tell the undergraduate is try to get into an intern. Well, first of all, I'm assuming it's someone with a science background. I know science and healthcare biotech, a science degree, a PhD is preferable. And there are internship programs that are sponsored by large pharma for summer sessions. That's always helpful to get some experience, whether it's in a lab, whether it's rotating through a clinical team, and get connections through people working in a larger pharma who may then have connections at smaller biotechs, but it's notoriously difficult. And I made my way here after several years, and I started at a big pharma and then kept going to smaller into a startup. So it took a while to get here.
Stephen, one thought, and this could be both for founders maybe as well as people. The way I do it, like the way I view it, and I guess it's my view, so take it for what it's worth. I used to work at a big company. I was at McKinsey for a long time, and the focus there is really, excellence and whatever. Have you done amazing things and what your resume looks like and all that stuff. In my world now, there's a lot around attitude rather than, let's say, aptitude. So yes, you've done a great PhD, or you have done amazing research, or you can code like nobody else can code. What I'm really looking for is that person who will love what they do, who have a can-do mindset. You know, I want to get shit done. I want to build stuff. I'd overhire that, even if your coding skills are not that good. We'll teach you those, even if you didn't go to Stanford. So I would show up if I'm looking for a job. I would show up at an interview with energy, passion, commitment. Let me get stuff done. And if I'm on the other side, that's what I want to see. Assuming, of course, you meet a minimum bar on the aptitude side. Like, I'm not this is not black or white in any shape or form. But at least that's one way I think about it. I'm happy for others to disagree. It's just my view.
Once more, Vangelis, I wouldn't agree more with you. I totally agree that you can find easily skills, but you cannot find easily personalities that can, join a team. At least for the company of our size, we are 20 people, so we're not, a very big company. So the company spirit and the company structure needs personalities to join us, and so that we can learn also from them. We can have the nice chemistry all together. And I totally agree. Skills can be learned. Of course, having a standard minimum base.
I will agree with that. Sorry, Fay, go on.
Please go ahead, Afroditi.
Just a short comment. I will agree that, and that becomes even more important, just to put a bit of context, when you have a smaller team. And if you're a candidate and you're applying, just know that, especially in small teams, there are founders there that give 200% of their time every single day. So when you join that team, you have to be able to match or even up that. So that's why attitude is so much important than aptitude, subject to meeting a very specific basic requirement.
I agree with everyone. My comment and invitation to young professionals that are interested in joining a startup is literally email the startup. I mean, it's a small team. Somebody will read your email, and if you're lucky, they will remember what is it that makes you passionate. So it's important not to just email the CV, but also explain what is it about that startup and their vision that is relevant and exciting to what you represent. And again, we have hired people that emailed us, and we could remember, oh, do you remember that engineer who had written 3 years ago? What is he up to? And then we write, hey, we have this opening, and then they're available, and then we have really great people in the team that joined as an intern, as Effie said, and grew into leaders in record time because they had the right attitude that Vangelis and Evangelos and Afroditi talked about. So it's really, like Evangelos said, about the chemistry and what, of course, can you offer and the match of the technical background. But ultimately, it's the can-do attitude and the appetite to roll up the sleeves and have a hands-on commitment and output.
Amazing. Thank you all for jumping in on that. And I'll add a bit of color also from my experiences in the industry on two sides. Effie, what you said about the difficulties is so true. And we see that exaggerated a bit working with some digital therapeutic companies. They're fast-paced startups working with new technologies in a very new space of the industry, but they're full with highly experienced biopharma industry folks with 20, 30 years of experience, because there's that need to come in, build up quickly, and sort of run towards regulatory approval. And that makes it difficult sometimes to come in as an early hire. The other thing we've experienced, this is a little bit pre-COVID times, is participating in health tech hackathons. There's some teams that are already formed that go there and participate, and you can go in as an individual and kind of support those teams. And we've seen some people get onboarded through that process by just being a support to within health tech hackathons. And if you're in the New York City area, Cornell Tech does a few. Hopefully they will again soon, or virtually. So those are just another option there. Okay, we're at the 90-minute mark, and I think we've answered most of the questions as much as we can. So a bunch of thank yous now. First and foremost to the amazing panel. Thank you all for your insights, your contributions, for answering the questions, and for taking the time today to share your experiences. extremely insightful. Thank you, Lina, for the co-moderation and Greek Women in STEM. And thanks to everyone on the call, the many people who joined and stayed with us throughout the whole 90 minutes. Appreciate your time and your engagement through the chat. And we look forward to staying in touch. Keep in touch, follow GreekTech for future events. We have at least one coming up every month in different sectors. And we look forward to continuing the conversation, especially with regards to GreekTech and Biotech. So with that, I think we'll wrap up our session just on time, and wishing everyone a great rest of the week.
Καλή Ανάσταση to everybody.
Καλό Πάσχα.
And happy Easter.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.